Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another excellent episode of Humble Beginnings, Great Expectations. Today's episode is going to be with Anthony Steele with Marlin Title. We're going to talk about his illustrious journey as well as the title industry. Don't forget to subscribe and follow and pick up Hoist IV-like hydration at a store near you. Take a look at the previous episodes. Follow me.
Be humble. Be humble. Sit down. Sit down. Be humble. Be humble. Sit down. Sit down. Be humble. Be humble. Sit down.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another excellent episode of Humble Beginnings, Great Expectations, the show that focuses on the entrepreneur's journey from the bottom to the breakthrough. I am your host, Jeremy Johnson. I am the broker owner of 7J Finance, Commercial, and Consulting. And today's episode, we are going to get back to the entrepreneur and talk about their career journey. Before we get to the guest that we have today, I want to talk to you about a title company and a settlement agency is the bedrock of any major financial transaction. And they're entrusted with large amounts of money that pass through between one party to the next. And without integrity, trust, responsibility, and fiducial responsibility, these transactions would never happen and would break up the entire system of commerce in the business world. So when I talk to you about the owner and the people that work for these settlement agencies or title companies, know that the bedrock of these organizations lie with the integrity, trust, financial responsibility, and the fiducial responsibility behind the people that work for them and the people that own them. So now, today we have owner of a settlement agency by the name of Marlin Title. We have a proud member of the Omega Phi Psi fraternity, as well as the former chaplain of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, Mr. Anthony Steele.
Good afternoon, sir.
Anthony, I appreciate your time, my man.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. So it's been a minute. I definitely wanted to have you on the show because in what we do in financial lending, the title company and settlement agency is the bedrock of the transaction. And you got to have one. There are many out there, but not all are created equal.
That is a true statement.
So I appreciate your time, and I'm happy that you're here with me because you're one of my go-to title company representatives.
Thank you.
Proud to have you on the show. So getting right to it, Humble Beginnings. What inspired you to open and launch Marlin Title?
Well, actually, I did not open or launch Marlin Title. Marlin Title was created back in 2004. I spent 28 years in commercial banking, corporate banking, did a lot of real estate financing transactions, hotels, medical buildings, actually did some residential developments as well. So did a lot of financing from a real estate standpoint. And so when I was looking for another opportunity, one of the things that I saw or it became available was this title company. And because I use title insurance in the lending activity that we did in the past, to me, it made sense. It was basically transferable skills. All the things that I learned in 28 years as a commercial banker, quite frankly, translated very well into title insurance. And so to me, it was just a progression, quite frankly. And so when Marlin Title became available for purchase, my wife and I actually bought it back in 2019. So it had been around for about 15 years prior to our ownership. And so we bought it in 2019 and we've been owning it ever since.
Wow, that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And one thing that you just said that I've had in common with many of my guests is the layering of experience and skills from one path, one step of the journey onto the next.
Yeah.
And so, that was amazing that you said that because it seems like there's this parallel string that runs with all of you entrepreneurs.
Yes.
In that you're always seeing something from your current experience and how you can expand upon it, upon, the next step of your journey. So that being said, what gap in the industry did you see that you would be able to fill when you purchased Marlin Title?
For me, it was really about building those partnerships. This business, real estate business that we're in, that we share, that we work together in, is a business that relies upon building those relationships and partnerships. There is a challenge within the industry because everyone thinks that, oh, I'm independent. But really, as I work with you and I work with real estate agents and I work with other lenders, the question becomes, how do you support those partnerships? And the underlying current that exists is really that foundation, that partnership foundation that needs to be there. Because without the trust, without having the ability to rely upon, part of my job, quite frankly, is knowledge base. If I could help my lenders and my real estate partners understand certain components of what we do and how we do it and why we do it, to me, that's important. So part of not only just executing on the title side, but making sure that my partners understand why we do certain things. We spoke earlier about estoppels, the importance of estoppels, why we use estoppels, the cost associated with getting that information. To me, that's helpful in helping you understand why we need it, what we use it for, and quite frankly, the cost associated with it.
100%. Now, I've been in the industry for over 20 years. You've been in it for over 20 years. We're seasoned professionals, but a lot of individuals are just getting into the market right now and are having their first, second, third experience with a settlement agency. What, in your opinion, separates a great title company from a mediocre everyday title company?
Quite frankly, title insurance from agency to agency is blocking and tackling. It's those added values that you bring to the table. Again, we talked about the estoppel, getting that information out, helping you understand that information, why we do, how we do it. But it's also being available. Real estate business is not a 9-to-5 Monday through Friday's job.
Say that again.
I can't say that enough. And so the other night, in fact, on a Friday night, I got an email from a client saying, can you provide me with a quote? At 9 o'clock at night, I'm pulling that quote together because they need to take a look at it on a Saturday because they're meeting the clients. So it's really going beyond just the 9-to-5, the Monday through Friday, making sure that, again, you're helping support that business. Because quite frankly, as a lender, that's a business. As a real estate agent, that's a business. As a title agent, that's a business as well. And so we have to find a way to bring that together and build that, again, partnership. But more importantly, how do we support each other? How do we get it done? Because sometimes you only get one shot at getting that business. And I want to be there to help my partners out.
If you were a 9-to-5 worker, as opposed to the owner of the establishment, would you be fulfilling that request at 9 p.m. on a Saturday?
The truth of the matter is, quite frankly, I've been a 9-to-5, but I've always worked beyond that. That is ingrained in me, always being there to support whoever my partners are. And so again, that's another thing that I brought forward with respect to how do I help build my business out? How do I support what it is I do and the partners that I have and the relationships that I establish?
Yeah.
As a commercial banker, majority of my job, quite frankly, was to work with entrepreneurs. So I've learned a lot from those entrepreneurs and helping them build their business. And so quite frankly, I've taken that and it translates very well into what we do now, because again, it's still building those partnerships one at a time.
Now, that's an innate skill to understand, again, you're taking and layering the experience and the skills and you're taking it on, but it's not born in everyone.
No, it's not.
So have you always seen yourself as an entrepreneur, business owner, or when did you realize that that was part of
my DNA?
Yeah.
I have to be honest with you, candid, working with entrepreneurs as a commercial banker. I always sat back and I looked, I reviewed, I assessed what it is they did, how they did it, when they did it, and quite frankly, why they did it. And I would hear these things, all the different skills and techniques and all the different things that they did to make their business or help their business grow. And so for me, in the back of my mind, I was always, I can do this. I've amassed this knowledge and this education and this information. And I'm looking at people, quite frankly, sometimes were very successful, and not because they did anything special, but they were always working in their business, always building their business, always making sure their partners around them were supporting each other. And to me, that is the layering, as you mentioned, the way you help others establish themselves.
Understood. What would you say is the biggest misconception that consumers or, realtors or what have you that work with, don't understand about what you do and what title is?
The biggest misconception, quite frankly, is simply this, that nothing is being done. The sausage making isn't happening. There is a lot of sausage making that gets done behind the scenes. Reviewing the title search, reviewing the lien search, making sure you've captured all the numbers, making sure the challenge is, because not all deals, quite frankly, run smoothly. You'll have a number of deals, and sometimes it's 30, 40% of your transactions will have some stumbling blocks. The question becomes, how do you move past that? How do you get it down the transaction down the road? How do you resolve those issues? The analytics, the review, the research, the Q&A with the underwriter, making sure they're on board, because they're the ones that's going to ensure the risk. So they have to be a partner with what you're doing and whether or not it makes sense. And so all of those different things have to happen. And a lot of times real estate agents think, oh, here's a contract, let's get it done.
Yeah.
It's simple. It's not. It is a very involved process that requires a tremendous amount of time, skills, and experience to move it forward.
Absolutely. Now, there have been those experiences that happen where you get into it and you don't even know what the right questions are to ask, right? I mean, that comes with a certain level of, trial and error and repeat. What has been, in your experience, the biggest lesson that you've had to learn during your growth? Or pleasure?
The biggest lesson, or the lesson, not the biggest, but the lesson is, and you're right, quite frankly, until you lift that skirt and take a peek, sometimes you don't know what's under that skirt.
Yeah.
And so
it's this figurative, but
figuratively speaking. But it's really learning how to work with that underwriting, because they bring a tremendous amount of knowledge and insight. And there are things that I will recommend that they will say, you know what, that's right on. We like it. Let's go with it. There are times when they'll say, no, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. Let's find this other way. But the biggest challenge, or the challenge that I've had in this business, is really trying to find the opportunity to move the deal forward. That's always the biggest challenge, because again, sometimes deals just may have too many things going on.
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to check off those check boxes and move them along. And so the biggest challenge for us, quite frankly, is how do we, those challenges that we encounter, how do you move it forward? How do you get it down the road? Because again, ultimately, we all get paid if it's resolved.
A lot of people eat off one deal.
Exactly.
For sure. What, in your experience, what is the number? It's a people business.
Mm-hmm.
What is the number one thing that derails a real estate transaction in the end?
The number one reason why, or number one thing that happens, permits. Permits will derail a transaction.
Holy.
Permits do not prohibit
The lack thereof?
No, the lack of.
Yes.
Because what happens is permits do not, you can still issue title insurance if there are permits on a property. But think about it for a second. Why would you want to acquire a property that has an existing permit that hasn't been closed out properly, inspected properly, approved properly, and it's sitting out there? Permits are the number one problem out there on real estate transactions.
Wow.
Because again, if I'm acquiring a property, perfect example, I had a transaction where the air handler for an HVAC system was installed 7 years ago, 2 owners prior. And the new buyer, the permit wasn't closed out. And so we had to go and find an engineer that would go reopen the permit, do the inspection, get it approved, and close. Cost $500 to do that. But we were able to at least get that issue resolved, because technically this is what it comes down to. My job, ultimately, as a title agent, is to provide a free and clear property to the buyer. And if you have permits outstanding, is it a free and clear property? And the answer, in my opinion, is no. And quite frankly, there are some title companies that does not want to hear about permits, because permits do not prohibit title from being issued. But what are you doing? You're passing on another problem that needs to get
resolved. At some point or another, it's going to be a roadblock for someone else.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that being said, when you're dealing with your customers, whether the seller or the buyer, they just want the result. They just want the fire. They don't really care what happens in the middle. What would you say has been your proudest moment since opening Marlin Title? Like, is it the fact that you're just still around? Is it just a matter of surviving the game? Would you say, you know what I mean? Like, just the fact that you're still here. I mean, you should definitely give yourself kudos for that, and just to be around still. But
if people understood the last 7 years of my life, like you have to take into consideration, we bought this business in May of 2019. By December of 2019 into 2020, we were in a pandemic.
Yeah.
And so just taking on a new endeavor, holding on to a business, trying to fund it and move it along, but you're dealing with all the challenges we all had to face collectively in 2020 into 2021 with a pandemic, running a business under those conditions. And then you have a hyper real estate market where prices have gone through the roof in this market. And you go from a buyer's market to a seller's market. And so now all these different things are happening over the last 7 years for us. And I'm moving and shaking and trying to stay afloat and keep things going. That's been the biggest challenge for us, quite frankly, not to even deal with just the normal real estate issues.
Yeah.
It's having that in concert with all the other things environmentally, interest rates, pricing, pandemic, all those things coming forward, I've got to add into the mix. I can't just go out there and worry about when the next deal is coming. I got to worry about, how do we make it? How do we survive? How do we move it forward?
Was there ever a moment where you were like, man, I don't know if it's worth it?
Multiple times. And that's entrepreneurship. If you're concerned about failing, entrepreneurship is not for you, because there will be times when you will question yourself, you will question the people around you, you will question the environment, you will question all these things that you rely upon to be successful, to grow, to stay in business. So yes, there have been times when I look back and I go, oh my God, how do we get them back?
Facts.
And that's entrepreneurship, because everyone, I made a comment about how the sausage is made. Everyone looks at your success as an entrepreneur, but they don't realize the failures and the challenges and all the other things that leads up to that success.
Yes. I would definitely second that. And surviving the game and just being in the game is the win.
Yes.
And with all the stress and all the different variables and all the different things that come into it, would you ever change anything when it comes from being part of a cog in the wheel and part of a system, or being an entrepreneur, business owner?
There are parts of what I do, running the business, owning the business, supporting the dream, moving the dream along is important. But I have to be candid with you. Just be able to survive has been the biggest challenge for us. Would I do anything differently? Sure, I would do things differently. initially, one of the things that I've learned about entrepreneurship is that everyone has a better mousetrap. Everyone has a way to help you move the needle. Sometimes you have to take a step back and say, does this really make sense? Because there's a lot of people, ancillary services that will come at you to tell you how they could help you do better. And you got to understand, they're making money.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily, they have another or newer mousetrap.
Yes.
But the truth of the matter is you got to ask yourself, will that and how will that mousetrap really benefit me and my business? That's the challenge that I've had to face. And I've quite frankly, I've taken on some things that in hindsight now, I should not have. I should have walked away from it. And that's how I've learned that lesson. Because everyone tells you, oh, my mousetrap is better and it can help you and it will do this and will do that. And the truth of the matter is you have to be able to assess and take a step back and really make sure it makes sense, quite frankly, for your business.
Absolutely. And that brings me to my next question. Is the perfect transition is, what was your life like prior to, being the business owner, being the entrepreneur, and what lessons do you use in your upbringing that you still utilize in your running of the business today? One of the, and I'm not sure if you know this about me, but my mother died when I was 9, and I was living on St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. That's where I grew up. And my dad remarried years later and married a lady from New York City, and she inherited 5 stepkids. Didn't have any natural born kids of her own. And she was trying to figure out what to do with these 5 kids. And so my brother and I actually went to a private school in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And it's a school, if you've heard the name Hershey, it's synonymous with Hershey chocolate. And the founder of Hershey, the school, Hershey Chocolate, as well as the school, Milton Snavely Hershey, in 1909, actually built a school for kids that had lost one of their natural parents. And interestingly enough, back then, he gave $600 million in 1909 to a trust for the school. The school, K through 12 today, is one of the wealthiest K through 12 programs in the country. It doesn't cost anything to go to this school. And so for me, going in that environment and being around that kind of entrepreneurship, because Milton Hershey himself, quite frankly, failed in some of his endeavors, but he was able to build something from it and grow a business that exists today, a business that's one of the wealthiest and richest companies in the world. And the school owns 51% of Hershey stocks. So you can't look at that and say that's a failure. Right. So for me, my background, my history was all part of it. How do you continue to push forward? Looking and knowing the history of Milton Hershey and what it did and what he provided to folks like myself that lost a parent, to me was you use that and you leverage that over the years. Man, that's powerful. I love that answer, bro. That was excellent. What do you think about when it comes to your upbringing, Marlin title, and legacy?
It is, why do you become an entrepreneur? You believe in what you do. You believe on building something, but you also want to leave something behind. With my 2 kids and a grandchild, to me, that's my legacy. That's what I can leave behind for them. And quite frankly, again, I go back to Milton Hershey and what he left behind. That school today has $18 billion in assets, from $600 million to $18 billion.
It's major.
Okay. So for him to have left something like that inspires me, quite frankly, to leave something behind. But also in the time between now and then, it's about building and helping others build their legacy. Okay. I want to help you leave something behind for your kids, but it comes from my partnership with you and others that lends itself to that.
Oh, that's major. And there's more than just brick and mortar legacy. There's character, like
Yes.
and helping others and being altruistic in what you do and all your
That's
endeavors.
correct. Yeah.
That all adds to it. For the entrepreneurs out there that are thinking of starting a business or wanting to scale up whatever thing that they have going on right now, what are some of the systems or habits that you use, that you maintain, that you would offer advice to someone else to utilize in their building of their business?
I would say there would be one primary answer to that. And that is get to know people that can add value to what it is you're trying to get to. Know the questions, look for the answers. And if you're having conversations with people, if you're getting to know people, if you're building partnerships and relationships with people that are value added, and you have to ask yourself, how do I make this happen? Well, you make it happen by, quite frankly, having that outreach, being able to reach out to those folks, to know and who and what they do and how they do it and why they do it. Someone like myself with all that depth and wealth of knowledge from a banking standpoint.
Yeah.
From at one time in my career, I was a senior VP in banking. I was the head of 2 markets for 2 separate financial institutions. I've got a depth of knowledge that is significant. So finding those people and having that experience, working with all those entrepreneurs over the years, I've learned a little bit about everyone and how they did it and why they did it. To me, that's part of it. And that's what helps build you as a person. So when those challenging times and tough times come, you sit back and you go, okay, how did this person handle that? Or how do we maneuver around this? There's never, ever an easy path forward.
Right.
There are always challenges along the way, hurdles along the way that you have to overcome and get past. And that's, quite frankly, you mentioned Omega Psi Phi fraternity. That's one of the things that I learned going through that process, is how do you overcome those challenges? How do you overcome those obstacles? Because there are always obstacles along the way in life. And the question is, we could all stop, sit down and cry. Or we can find a way around it, find a way over it, find a way under it, but find a way.
Just find a way. And what's important for the younger generation today is to realize who your people are, number one, and also to have the humility to be able to ask questions. You know what I mean? Like, really humble yourself to know you don't know what you don't know. And that, there are people out there with expertise, with experience, that are willing to help you and give you the information, the insight, the motivation that you need in order to take the next step. And it's always just about the next step. So, definitely find your people, or they will find you, but just be authentic.
Yes.
About who you are, and everything else will kind of fall in place. Great Expectations. What trends do you think are kind of shaping the industry and where real estate closings are going on today? I mean, I'm sure you've got some AI rumblings coming from, but especially with all of the, misinformation, the fraud, with that, I can imagine that could be something that would be a hesitant thing for people to fully put their trust in. Where do you see that going?
It is, what I'm seeing out in the marketplace right now are real estate agents now realizing it's not going to be easy going forward. There are some new tools, as you mentioned, AI, that's out there. They're using those tools much better than they have in the past, and they're going to continue to do that. The truth of the matter is, again, I'm learning, and I've gotten a lot of phone calls from people just asking the questions. To me, I think that's where, if people realize no longer can you just get through it just to get through it. You've got to know. You've got to have that knowledge, that insight. And the truth of the matter is, I see and I get a lot of phone calls from real estate agents, from lenders, quite frankly, that will ask the question. And for me, that means I've got to be more resourceful, but more importantly, more available. And I think that real estate agents and lenders alike, and this industry as a whole, is starting to realize that we can't just sit back and have it come to us.
Correct.
At one point in time that happened,
Right.
but no longer does it apply. You've got to get out there. You've got to work it. You've got to make it happen. You've got to use the tools, the new tools, old tools, every tool you can get your hands on.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's really where the industry is right now. And I'm starting to see more and more agents and lenders invest time, energy, and effort into learning those things.
Absolutely. That's a great point you bring up too, because the harder things get, the more skill and detail have to be put into your craft. And the people notice it. And they notice the ones that are not doing the actual little things as well. So yeah, the cream always rises to the top. And I know when a title company is, especially with you and your staff, are in tune with just the industry and or a specific tone of a transaction, either checking up on me, they're sending me emails, they're, always in my ear, letting me know that, we're here for you to accommodate the transaction, to make sure that you're in need or having everything that you need in time of the transaction, because time kills deals. And that is key. I give you and your staff kudos for that.
Thank you.
I feel it. That being said, what do you hope people feel after they do business with Marlin Title?
It comes down to, again, going back to my banking days. I've always been told, and I've understood that you have clients out there. And we don't get bogged down with the minutia of whose fault it is. That gets us nowhere. Our job isn't to point fingers. Our job is to get the deal done. And so for me, it really is just about moving the deal forward. I'm not concerned what happened, how it happened, and why it happened.
Yeah.
Don't care. What concerns me is making sure that my clients, the buyer and the seller, the real estate agent and the lender, everything gets done and it gets concluded.
That's all they want.
That's all that matters.
Just give me results.
Exactly. And so that's all part of who I am, what I've learned over the years as a banker, and now as an entrepreneur, is really making sure that the client is a foremost in your mind, that you're getting it done and moving it down the road and getting it concluded.
What does success mean to you now as opposed to when you started?
It certainly has changed. When I first bought this business, I've learned that nothing is always automatic. And so success for me, quite frankly, means if there's a challenge, how do you get around it? How do you move beyond it? Before, success meant, whoa, more revenue, more this, more that. But that's not really what it's all about anymore. It really is, how can I help someone be more successful? Because the truth of the matter is, your success lends to my success. And if people look at that position and was always willing to help others be successful, to me, that's what I see now as a success. I wasn't thinking about that in the beginning. I was thinking, we're just running a business, let's make it happen. But I realized that success comes from helping others, because in helping them, you're helping yourself.
I love that. All right, last sentence, man. My humble beginnings created at blank, and my great expectations are.
My humble beginnings created a drive. My great expectations are to walk away from this business and have people say, it was a pleasure working with him. You can't ask for anything more than that, quite frankly, to be able to inspire, to be able to support and help others grow, to help them move the needle. I want to be able to walk away and say, hey, have someone pat me on the back and say, thank you. You did a great job. You helped me out. I appreciate what you do.
Well, I thank you, sir. You helped me out. And I appreciate what you do. That's a wrap. Ladies and gentlemen, Humble Beginnings, Great Expectations. Anthony Steele, Marlin Title. Check them out. You got anything coming up? Anything you want to pitch?
No, I'm good for right now.
How do we find you on the social?
We are on Facebook. We're on Instagram at marlintitle.com. We're also website, www.marlintitle.com. And Anthony Steele at Marlin Title is my email address.com.
Excellent. Excellent. Shout out to Hoist, our official drink sponsor. Thank out to Mijo Entertainment. That's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Humble Beginnings, Great Expectations. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
We got you.